Okay, so before I start decorating these cookies, I'm gonna in advance make some of the little flowers that are gonna go on them, because then they can dry on a piece of parchment paper off to the side while I'm decorating everything, and I can transfer them at the end. So I have a little floral nail here, and I'm gonna take a little bit of my floral icing and I'm gonna put it right onto the nail, and then I'm gonna take a piece of parchment paper that I've cut into a square rectangle and just stick it on top there, okay? And now I have my stiff consistency icing, and I do have a video on creating icing consistencies where you can see kind of what I'm looking for to create this icing consistency. I've got a Wilton 103 tip on this bag, and I'm gonna make little roses. So to start off, it's not a bad idea to just have a damp cloth nearby so you can continually kind of wipe off the end of your tip as you're working. But I'm just gonna be spinning this nail in my hand as I'm creating the flower. So I've got the wide end of my tip toward the nail, and I'm gonna squeeze the bag to create pressure. I'm holding the floral tip straight up and down right now. I'm gonna spin my nail and spin my bag and kind of create a little loop. I'm not sure if I went out of the camera screen there. Okay, so sometimes I'll use my scribe, sometimes I'll have a paintbrush just to help me create the floral structure, but I'm just gonna stand that upright, and then I'm gonna start with some outer petals. So I'm going to, again, I have the wide end of my tip down toward the nail, and I'm gonna squeeze and spin my nail and pull down. So now I started with my tip going straight up and down, and as I came across, I pulled it down flat onto the nail, okay? I'm gonna come basically to where that petal stopped, a little bit behind there, and I'm gonna do the same thing and come down toward the nail, and then I'm gonna come behind this one, same thing, down toward the nail. I'm gonna stop there, and I'm gonna look to see if I need to fix the structure at all. Sometimes these areas are sticking out. And then I'm going to carry on, and it's going to be the same thing, but as we get further away from the center of the rose, we're going to be angling our tip slightly more outward. And so I'm going to do exactly what I did before, but I'm angling it a little bit more outward now. And from here on out, with each layer that we add to our rose, we're just angling it further out. And you really just, as big as you want your rose to be. It does depend on the size of the tip you're using also. Like I'm using a 103. If I wanted a really large rose, I wouldn't have started with a 103, but I'm doing a smaller little rose. And just kind of manipulate your petals as you go if you need to. Okay, I like to look at it and just check for symmetry. So to my eye, I think I need to add one more petal over here, and then I'll probably be done with it. So I'm gonna come in with my one final petal, and I will manipulate that down where I need it to. And then I'm just gonna set this on my table to dry, and then I will, after it's dried, be able to really easily transfer it onto my cookie. Okay, so we are going to create this little bunny. Well, I guess it's just bunny ears with some flowers and greenery. And so to start with this one, I'm going to start by outlining my bunny's ears. So I have my outline consistency icing here in the color that I've selected for my bunny. And I'm going to start by just creating the outline of where I want the ears to be. So I've got one here. You will notice with this cookie that I did not flood the whole base of the cookie in advance. I kind of wanted to keep like a bit of a rustic look to this cookie. So I wanted to have the exposed cookie below. And this is kind of a nice one because it's got like the cinnamon sugar on it as well. So I think it works well as an exposed cookie. Okay, so before I go any further, I'm going to take a flood consistency pink icing. And we're just going to use a paintbrush and brush the pink into the background of the ear, like you can see back here. So I'm going to take that pink and I'm going to put a bit in here. And we'll just use a paintbrush to just spread that out. It does pick up a little bit of that cinnamon sugar. But that's okay. This is food after all. And I just added a little bit more icing. It was just a little thin on that one corner. Alrighty. We'll redo this one little spot where our outline lifted. Okay. And now we're going to outline the inner portion of the ear. So I'm going to start about here. And come up to that top point. And then on this side. So I'm just squeezing a consistent amount of pressure on my outline bag. So I'm going to press down, squeeze and lift, and just guide that line where I want it to go. Okay. And so I like to work on whichever section would be behind first and work my way towards whichever sections would be forward. So on this ear, this flap here is behind and this flap folds over on top. So I'm going to start on the section that is in the back. And I'm going to take my outline consistency and fill in the center of this area where I think it's likely to crater. And then same on this ear. This is the section that's kind of in the back, so I'm going to fill that. And then we'll get our flood icing. And put it right on top. Use the scribe to bring that flood icing toward all those edges. And I might need to add just a touch more. So just bring this down toward the bottom of the ear. And then we'll do the same thing on the other ear. So right on top of that outline consistency that we put in there to prevent cratering. And then we'll use our scribe to bring it toward the edges. My flood icing is about a 5-second consistency. I do have a video on the different consistencies of icing. And I also have one on preventing craters if you need extra information on either of those topics. Okay, so now we want to let this dry, crust over, just long enough to where we can go in and do this side and maintain separation like you can see in the back here, or maintain that sort of definition. So while we're letting that crust over, we're going to come work on some of the greenery. And I'm going to start with the little pussy willows. So I've got an outline consistency icing in brown. I'm going to touch down, lift my bag, and pull that icing, and then touch down. And we're going to do some more over here. So touch down, lift my bag, pull that icing, and touch down again, and coming out right here. And now I'm going to take, again, an outline consistency in white, and I am going to squeeze out little dollops of icing, kind of in an oval shape, almost like little eggs. These are going to be the little fuzzy parts of the pussy willow branch. And I will just use my paintbrush just to soften those tips at the end, because my pussy willow shouldn't really be super pointy. And we'll come do the other side. So these are going to be, I mean, they're kind of like puffy in real life. So, and they're fuzzy. So I don't want this to be like a nice smooth surface. I'm okay keeping the texture with the pussy willows. And then again, I'm just going to take a paintbrush and press down on those little pointy bits at the end to keep a bit of a rounder tip. And then I'm going to come back to my brown. This is the outline consistency that we used for the branch. And I'm just going to put a little bit of icing coming up from the branch onto each of the little fluffy white parts. Okay, so there's one of our little pussy willow branches. Okay, now we're going to add in some greenery. So I have 2 shades of green that I'm using for greenery. They're very similar actually in color. They're the same colors, one's just a couple shades lighter. So I am going to use a combination of both of the greeneries, and we're just going to sporadically add in some little leaves, branches of leaves. So I'm just going to press down, pull, and tap down again, press down, pull, tap down again. Do some more over here, press down. And I'm going to come off of this branch. Okay, and now we're just going to add some little leaves to these. Same way that we did the pussy willows, we're just going to press down, apply some pressure, squeeze, and then ease off on that pressure. And so in this instance, I'm actually going to keep that pointed tip for my little leaves. And it can kind of overlap on top of the pussy willow. Again, I'm not really worrying about nice, smooth, perfect texture with this cookie. I don't know, I guess, you know, you could do like an outline and fill with a flood for each of these little leaves. But I kind of just like the added texture. I think texture, when it's intentional, has good visual effect. So we're keeping it today. Also, this is a sample cookie that I'm working on for what will be an Easter pre-order. So I kind of want to make things beautiful but easier on myself, because I know that I'm going to end up having to kind of produce these on a large scale. So I don't want to have to go to the effort of outlining and flooding all of these individual little leaves when I'm producing it on a large scale for Easter pre-orders. So if you can make things easier on yourself, why not? Okay, let's add in some of the lighter green for variety. So we're just going to do the same thing that we were just doing, and I'm just going to put a couple little branches up towards the top here. We'll just do the exact same thing. All right. Now down at the bottom, I want to do a couple larger leaves. So I'm gonna draw the outline. And I'm actually not going to be making these nice and smooth either. You can see here I left them kind of untouched, unflooded. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to fill in one side, fill in the other side, and then we'll just kind of do a line down one side, a line down the other side, a couple lines down the middle. And we are going to just leave them just like that. And we'll do another one right here. And I'm going to use my scribe to just help create more of a point at the end there. And fill in one side. Fill in the other side. Again, at this point, I could take a flood icing and go over top and have like a nice, perfectly smooth finish like we've done here with the ear. That probably wouldn't crater because we've got the outline consistency underneath. But I'm really just keeping more of a rustic vibe to this whole cookie. So texture is our friend today. Okay. And I'm just going to take my scribe and press some of that down. Okay. I always, when I'm doing florals, love to add in like little beads and berries and things. So anywhere that I have blank space here, I'm going to try and fill in with branches of berries. So I'm taking my brown outline and I'm creating, a branch here in this open space. Here as well. do just those two for now. I'm going to take this purple. This is also an outline consistency, and I'm just going to do little beads all over each branch. And I want them, if possible, to be round, not pointy. So sometimes if you get a little point coming off of it, you can just press it down. So, see, when we do these real-time videos, unlike the sped up ones on Instagram, you can see that sometimes the outline lifts up. These little things that don't work out for us that always get edited out of the quick reels on Instagram, but happens to everyone. I mean, you could wait for the outline to fully dry, I guess, but who has time for that? Oh my goodness. Okay. We are going to add more, but first we're gonna take a break here and go back to some of our work on the ears. So let's fill out now. Again, we talked about how we did the section that would be further behind. This flap folds over top of the front, so we're gonna do this one next, and then this one, and in this ear, this flap folds over top, so it would be the most at the front, so we're gonna do that section last. So I'm gonna grab that outline consistency, and I'm gonna fill in this whole section where I think it's highly likely to crater. And I'm gonna bring that outline through right up towards the top. The narrower the section, the more likely it is to crater. So we definitely wanna make sure we're filling that in with our outline consistency icing. And then we'll take our flood icing and come right over top of it. And I'm gonna come off the pressure a tiny bit as I come towards the top there, because I don't want to overdo it in such a narrow spot. I am going to start up in this narrow area and just really carefully use my scribe and try to touch it toward the outline. Not sure if you can see, sorry, the dog outside. Not sure if you can see there's little ripples there where it's not touching the outline. So I'm just gonna try and carefully bring that down. And then I'm gonna pull some of this icing so that it kind of smooths out where it was a little ripply there. And then we'll use our scribe to gently bring the icing over to that other section that we already flooded and just touch it. We're going to do the exact same thing to the other ear. And again, I think I'm gonna start in this really narrow area. Sometimes I just start wherever I think it looks like it's most likely to run over the edge. And then I can kind of just prevent that from happening before it does. So over on this side too, it's just not quite touching the edge in a couple spots. Just make sure from all angles that it is, and then we'll carry on to this big section. And I actually want to add a little bit more. Again, we're going to let this section crust over before we add in this section, so we'll go back to doing some more of the florals. So we're going to take one of the little roses that we made earlier and we let sit to dry. Another color as well. So we've got two little flowers we're going to use. And I personally like to have a loose flood icing underneath anything that has a stiff consistency. So these florals are made with a stiff consistency icing. And what I find is, and this may be a climate issue, maybe where you live, if it's a more humid area. I'm in Calgary, Alberta. It's very dry, cool climate. So I find if I put a stiff consistency icing directly on a cookie, it will suck some of that moisture out of the cookie immediately below it. And you'll notice that when you're eating the cookie that, say this area is a moister cookie than where the stiff consistency icing is. So I am going to apply my florals on top of a bunch of flood icing, just so that I have that loose flood icing under the stiff floral, and the stiff floral can suck moisture from that instead of from the cookie. So I'm just taking a dollop of my flood icing. I'm going to grab this rosette that we made earlier. It's not fully dry. I mean, it's still a little bit wet, but it's sat long enough that we can take the backing off of it. And we'll just press that onto our cookie. And then we're gonna do another dollop of our flood icing. And same thing with this cookie. It also hasn't sat that long, but it has sat long enough to crust over. And these can kind of be played with a little bit in terms of their placement still. Oh, goodness. Everything happens on the video that you're filming. I just touched. Maybe I want this one a little bit more angled. Okay, so these two aren't fitting as perfectly flat as those two will together, which means I need this one to come in on an angle. So I'm gonna have to use a thicker icing than that loose flood, just to kind of add some support to it. So I'm gonna go with an outline. We still have the loose flood under that outline, so can still suck some moisture. But let's do, there we go, kind of like that. Okay, now we're going to take this green as a stiff consistency, and it has a Wilton 352 tip on it. And we're going to add some leaves anywhere that, basically we're gonna, if I can lift this, we're gonna just fill in any of these gaps around our flowers with a leaf, an intentional gap filler. So I'm going to take my piping bag and I'm going to apply pressure. And I've got a pretty big space there, so I'm going to do a pretty big leaf there. And the size of the leaf just depends on how long you're applying pressure for. And we'll do another one here. So I'm applying pressure, squeezing, and pulling away at the same time. We'll have another leaf right there. We're going to fill in a gap down here. So I'm going to apply pressure and pull away at the same time. We'll do, this is going to be a little different on each cookie because you kind of just do it where it's needed based on the flower placement for that cookie. So I'm going to do a couple right there. These ones are a little smaller. I'm going to do another one right here. I might even do another smaller one right here. Kind of coming up a little bit more. And we'll do some over here. And then I want to add in some more little berries. So again, I'm just going to find anywhere that has some blank space. And so we're going to add another branch right there that we can put some little berries on. And can maybe do some right here in this section. Oops. And over by these pussy willows here, there's some space. And so we'll come back to that purple and fill in those little berries. I think it's all about layering in the details. So I like to just like pause and take a look at it and see what else we can layer in. Okay, and then again, these berries, we don't want them having any pointy bits to them because they're nice and round. So just see if there's any that you need to manipulate. And then we can come and do this last section here because now this section has sat for a few minutes. So we're going to go back to our outline consistency. Fill in the center where it's likely to crater. And then take that flood consistency. And we don't over flood because then it could run over the edge. So just always remember, you can always add more flood in. Just as long as you have enough to kind of reach all your edges, and then you can add in So when we're bringing it to the edge, you kind of want to almost go up and over the edge a tiny bit just to cover up that outline or kind of blend into it as much as you can. I'm going to need to add in a little bit more. So we'll just blend that. And there we go. How cute. So I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial. If you like seeing these tutorials, I would love for you to subscribe and stay tuned for more.